24 days. That is all that separates the world from the biggest football tournament ever staged. 48 teams, 104 matches, 16 cities across 3 countries. A tournament that was supposed to be the crowning achievement of modern football, the moment when the sport finally planted its flag firmly in North America and announced itself to an entire continent that had never fully embraced it. 24 days out, and the conversation is not what anyone expected. It is not about which team is the favorite. It is not about which group is the group of death. It is not about the stadiums or the atmosphere or the historic opening match at the Azteca, one of the most iconic football venues on the planet. The conversation is about tickets that fans cannot afford, about border crossings that fans are afraid to attempt, about a tournament format so ambitious and so logistically complex that the people responsible for executing it have been running to catch up almost from the moment the hosting rights were awarded. The 2026 World Cup is 24 days away, and the honest answer to the question of whether everything is ready is, it is complicated. More complicated than FIFA would like to admit. More complicated than the official communications have suggested, and complicated in ways that are going to affect real fans, real players, and the real experience of the tournament in ways that matter. So let's go through it, all of it, the full picture, because this story deserves more than headlines and hot takes. What is actually happening with FIFA 2026? To understand how we got here, you need to go back to 2018. That is when the joint bid from the United States, Canada, and Mexico was awarded the hosting rights, and the vision that came with those rights was genuinely extraordinary. The largest World Cup in history, the most countries ever involved in a single tournament, the most matches ever played, the most teams ever participating. All of it was true, and all of it created a scale of logistical challenge that had no historical precedent to draw from. Every previous World Cup was hosted by a single nation. Even the tournaments that felt enormous, France 1998, Brazil 2014, Russia 2018, were contained within one country's infrastructure, one country's transport network, one country's legal and administrative framework. Organizing them was extraordinarily complex, but it was the complexity of one system managed by one national organizing committee, accountable to one government. FIFA 2026 is 3 systems, 3 countries, 3 sets of laws, 3 currencies, 3 visa regimes, 3 transportation networks that do not naturally connect to each other, and sitting above all of that, one organizing body trying to coordinate everything from the center while simultaneously managing a tournament of unprecedented scale. The problems that have emerged from this structure were not unpredictable. In some cases, they were predicted, clearly and early, by people who understood what the hosting arrangement actually required. But prediction and preparation are different things, and the gap between what was predicted and what was prepared for is part of why we are having this conversation with just over 3 weeks to go. Let's start with tickets, because this is the issue that has generated the most immediate, most visible, most widespread reaction from the fan base that the tournament is supposed to serve. Fans across the 3 host countries are in uproar over exorbitant ticket prices, which have affected sales and interest in the world's most popular quadrennial sporting event. That is not commentary from a tabloid. That is a characterization that has appeared in serious football journalism from outlets that cover this sport carefully and soberly. The numbers tell the story clearly. For international fans, Category 3 group stage tickets start from approximately $175, with knockout round and final prices significantly higher. It is worth noting that lower-priced tickets, around $90 to $110, have been made available for local residents in each host country, a concession that FIFA made following criticism. But for the traveling supporter flying in from Europe, South America, or Africa, those resident discounts do not apply. And that's before you add the cost of flights, accommodation, and transport between host cities, expenses that in a 3-country tournament can escalate with a speed that makes the ticket price look modest by comparison. For a fan traveling from abroad to follow their national team through a potential 6 or 7 match run, the total cost of attendance can reach figures that are simply beyond reach for the kind of supporter who has historically been the lifeblood of World Cup atmospheres. The working-class football fan. The person who saves for 4 years to make one tournament happen. The supporter whose presence in the stands creates the noise and the color and the passion that makes watching a World Cup unlike anything else in sport. That fan is being priced out, not by accident, not as a side effect of some other decision, as a consequence of a pricing structure that reflects FIFA's revenue ambitions more than it reflects any commitment to the accessibility of the tournament. And the response has been felt. Local politicians and the public have also raised concerns over the hike in transport fares on routes connecting match venues. The pricing pressure is not just on the ticket. It is on every element of the journey to the match. The transport, the accommodation, the food. The entire ecosystem of attending a World Cup game has been repriced at a level that the traditional football fan finds increasingly difficult to navigate. FIFA announced another round of ticket sales to coincide with the final stretch of the countdown. Whether that additional availability translates into genuine accessibility or simply provides more inventory at prices that remain prohibitive, that is a question the next few weeks will answer. Here's where things get interesting. The ticket problem does not exist in isolation. It sits alongside a set of logistical challenges that have been building since the hosting rights were awarded. The good news is that some of the most alarming earlier issues have been resolved. Host cities now have their full match schedules. Those were finalized in 2025. The basic scheduling clarity that was missing 18 months ago is no longer a problem, but other challenges have proven more stubborn. Municipal governments have had difficulty navigating the complexity and obscurity of sponsorship restrictions. The massive public expenditures required to organize World Cup tournaments are not directly reimbursed by FIFA sponsorship deals. Those deals generate revenue for FIFA itself, not for host cities. Local taxpayers are left funding infrastructure upgrades, security deployments, and transport enhancements, often without the offsetting revenue that was initially anticipated. That is not a small administrative problem. That is a financial and planning reality playing out in multiple cities simultaneously 24 days before the tournament begins. Concerns have also been raised earlier in the planning cycle about delays in recruiting experienced experts in key sectors, including operations, marketing, and hospitality. Those delays were real and well documented in 2024 and 2025. FIFA has since filled most of those roles, but the late start left some host cities playing catch-up on coordination. The staffing delays were perhaps the most telling detail in the entire planning process, because FIFA made a specific organizational choice early on. FIFA opted to take on the task of organizing the tournament's logistics in-house. It was also aimed at having more say over the projected $11 billion in revenue that would result from the event. That decision, to centralize control rather than delegate to experienced local organizing committees, was commercially motivated. It was about revenue control, and it created an organizational structure that required FIFA to build expertise and capacity it did not previously possess, in compressed timeframes, across 3 different national contexts. The consequences of those delays were visible in the preparedness gaps that host cities reported as recently as last year. Whether the final sprint has closed those gaps is something we are about to find out. But there's another angle here that goes to the heart of what makes this tournament different from anything that came before it. Think about what it actually means to attend multiple matches at FIFA 2026, not in theory, in practice. A fan who buys tickets to 3 group stage matches involving their national team, entirely normal for a committed World Cup supporter, might find themselves traveling between cities that are not just hours apart by car or train, but potentially in different countries, with different currency, different language, different customs requirements, different visa status depending on their nationality. The coordination of cross-border travel is particularly critical, as fans will likely traverse international boundaries to follow their teams, requiring streamlined customs and immigration processes to prevent bottlenecks. The bottleneck concern is real, and it is specific. The land border between Mexico and the United States is one of the busiest border crossings in the world on a normal day. During a World Cup group stage with tens of thousands of football fans attempting to cross in both directions around match schedules, the potential for serious delays and disruption is significant. From border crossings to ticket scams to currency confusion and roaming charges, 2026 World Cup travel concerns cover a wide range of challenges that need real answers before fans land. The roaming charge issue is a good example of how the three-country format creates problems that a single-nation tournament simply does not have. A fan traveling with a standard mobile plan from Europe or Asia will cross 3 different national mobile networks over the course of their tournament visit. Each crossing potentially triggers international roaming charges. Staying connected for navigation, for ticketing, for communication becomes a practical and financial challenge that most World Cup fans have never had to navigate before. This matters because it is in these practical details, the ones that seem small until you are actually living them, that the fan experience of a tournament is made or broken. The football itself can be extraordinary, but if the journey to the match is a bureaucratic and logistical ordeal, the memory of the tournament is shaped by the ordeal as much as by the football. Now, this is where things change, because FIFA 2026 is not the first time the organization has faced significant logistical challenges in the build-up to a major tournament. And looking at the historical record is genuinely instructive, both for what it tells us about FIFA's capacity to course correct and for what it tells us about the specific nature of the 2026 challenge. Brazil 2014 is the most obvious comparison, a tournament that faced enormous criticism in the build-up, over stadium construction delays, over infrastructure readiness, over the social cost of hosting in a country with such significant inequality. The concerns were real. Some of them materialized into genuine problems during the tournament. Others were resolved in the weeks before the opening match, through an intensive final push that those who were there describe as genuinely extraordinary in its ambition and its exhaustion. The tournament itself was widely regarded as a success on the football side. The logistical problems were real, but did not define the experience. Brazil's passion for football created an atmosphere that overrode many of the organizational shortcomings. Russia 2018 followed a similar pattern. Enormous pre-tournament concern about infrastructure, about accessibility, about the reception international fans would receive, and then a tournament that in terms of atmosphere and experience exceeded almost all expectations. Russian cities that football fans had never visited before turned out to be warm and welcoming and genuinely prepared. The pattern suggests that FIFA's ability to deliver a functional tournament despite significant pre-tournament turbulence is established. The organization has done it before. But here's what makes 2026 genuinely different from those historical comparisons. Brazil was one country. Russia was one country. The organizational complexity, however significant, operated within a single national framework. A single government could make decisions and implement them across the entire tournament. A single organizing committee could solve problems without navigating the jurisdictional complexity of 3 different national systems. Unlike previous World Cups hosted by a single nation, the 2026 tournament is characterized by vast geographic distances. The movement of teams, officials, and millions of fans across 3 different countries introduces significant logistical complexities that have no direct historical precedent. The bigger issue is that when problems arise in a 3-country tournament, and problems always arise in every World Cup in the final weeks, the resolution requires coordination across 3 national governments, 3 sets of regulatory frameworks, 3 transportation authorities, and 3 organizing committees, all of which need to align quickly enough to actually fix the problem before it affects the fan experience. That coordination challenge is unprecedented. There is no playbook for it. FIFA is writing the playbook in real time, 24 days out, while simultaneously managing the largest tournament in the history of the sport. Warning signs from Copa America 2024 highlight potential issues with event management and infrastructure. That tournament, also hosted in the United States, generated significant criticism for its organizational shortcomings. Stadiums that were not fully prepared, fan zones that were poorly managed, ticketing systems that generated confusion and frustration. And Copa America, for all its scale, is considerably smaller than the World Cup that follows it. The organizational lessons from Copa America were visible. Whether they have been fully absorbed and acted upon in the preparation for 2026 is a question that the next 3 weeks will begin to answer. Let us talk about the players and the teams, because in the conversation about logistics and tickets and border crossings, it's easy to lose sight of the people who are actually playing the football. The travel demands on teams in a three-country tournament are significant in ways that have no direct historical parallel. A team that plays its group stage matches in Mexico City, at altitude, in the heat, in one of the most iconic football atmospheres in the world, and then must travel to a venue in the northeastern United States for a round of 16 fixture, is covering considerable ground. The time zone adjustment, the altitude change, the travel fatigue, the adaptation to completely different climatic conditions, these are genuine competitive variables that coaching staffs and sports scientists are working to manage. For teams from South America, from Africa, from Asia, already dealing with the time zone displacement that comes with traveling to North America, the additional internal travel demands of a three-country tournament add layers of physical stress that accumulate over the course of a 4 or 5-week campaign. The teams with the deepest squads, the most sophisticated sports science support, the largest traveling parties with the most comprehensive recovery infrastructure, those teams have an advantage in this tournament that goes beyond tactical quality. The ability to manage the physical demands of a 2026 campaign is a genuine competitive differentiator. For fans, the atmosphere question is the one that matters most. And here the picture is genuinely more positive than the logistical concerns might suggest. A demonstrator holds a banner that reads in Spanish, "Your World Cup, it is our dispossession," during a protest against rising rents and the World Cup in Mexico City. The social tensions around the tournament in certain host cities are real, but those tensions coexist with a genuine, deep, multi-generational passion for football that will fill the stadiums with noise and color and the particular electricity that only a World Cup generates. The Azteca in Mexico City, VC Place in Vancouver, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. These are venues with the capacity and the character to generate tournament moments that people will talk about for decades. The football, when it comes, will be played in front of crowds whose passion for the game is real and whose experience of these moments will be genuine. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, the reason the tournament matters despite everything else that is imperfect about its organization. So what happens next? Where does this go in the 24 days between now and the opening match at the Azteca? The best case scenario is the one that history suggests is possible even if it does not feel certain right now. FIFA resolves the remaining coordination gaps between host countries. The additional ticket inventory that was released generates genuine accessibility at price points that the traditional football fan can reach, at least for the locally priced categories. The border crossing processes between the three host countries are streamlined enough to prevent the bottlenecks that logistical experts have been warning about. And the tournament begins on June 11th in Mexico City with a match that reminds everyone why they love this sport and why a World Cup is unlike anything else in the sporting calendar. That scenario is achievable. It requires execution at a level of intensity and coordination that has not always been evident in the preparation to date, but it is achievable. The more challenging scenario involves the organizational problems that have been visible throughout the planning cycle becoming more visible during the tournament itself. Fans arriving at host cities to find transport systems strained beyond capacity, border crossings that create delays and frustration for supporters trying to follow their teams across countries, ticketing systems that continue to generate confusion, and a tournament experience that, for a significant portion of the fans who attended, is remembered as much for what went wrong around the football as for the football itself. The success of the 2026 World Cup hinges not only on the matches themselves, but on the invisible architecture of city planning. The ability of host cities to manage the influx of people while maintaining urban functionality will serve as a case study in large-scale event management. FIFA's response to the remaining challenges will tell us a great deal about which of these scenarios is more likely. The additional ticket release is a signal of awareness. Whether it is followed by genuine price accessibility or simply more inventory at existing prices, that will tell us something. The fan journey infrastructure that gets built in the next 3 weeks will tell us a great deal. What we know right now is that the tournament is 24 days away. that the problems we have discussed today are real, documented, and consequential, and that the history of World Cups, even deeply troubled ones in the build-up, suggests that what happens on the pitch has a way of becoming the story that people actually remember. That may be the most honest thing that can be said about FIFA 2026 right now. The mess is real, and so is the football. The question, the one that every fan who has been watching these developments with a mixture of concern and anticipation has been sitting with, is which one ends up defining the tournament. What do you think? Is the organizational turbulence of the last few years a genuine threat to the fan experience? Or do you believe that once the football starts, everything else becomes background noise? And which host city do you think is going to produce the most memorable moments of the entire tournament? Drop your answer in the comments. This is exactly the kind of question that this community gets right more often than the pundits do. If you want to stay across every development between now and June 11th, subscribe and hit the bell. We cover everything: the football, the logistics, the stories that sit underneath the official communications, and the moments that actually matter. 24 days. The countdown is real. This story is still developing. And as always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one.